My name is Maya Bennett, and I was 31 when I found out a plain manila folder could tear apart everything I thought I knew about my family. My grandmother, Edith, turned 78 on a Saturday near the end of October. She made her own birthday cake that morning. Yellow cake, cream cheese frosting, little white daisies piped around the edges. She had been making that cake since before I was born. She set the dining table for 8 people, paper napkins, her nicest dishes, dried flowers from the front garden in a glass bowl. No one showed up. My parents were away skiing in Park City. My brother texted her at 3:40 in the afternoon. "Happy birthday, Grandma. Slopes are perfect." My dad sent nothing. My mom posted a photo of herself in ski goggles in her church group chat with the caption, "So grateful." After work, I drove almost 3 hours from Providence to my grandmother's place in Larkspur. I still had on my office flats, and there was a cheap bouquet from a convenience store sliding around on the passenger seat. When I walked in, Grandma was alone at the kitchen table. The candles had melted into the frosting. The ice cream had turned to soup. She stared at me like she was trying to place my face. The next morning, 2 strangers came to her door carrying a sealed folder with her signature across the flap. What was inside that folder stopped a sale, exposed a lie, and ended my family as I had known it. This is Quiet Family Stories, where people learn that calm boundaries can be stronger than loud arguments. If you've ever had to speak up for an older person everyone else was ignoring, leave a comment and subscribe. You'll want to hear what happened when we all ended up at the closing table. I still remember that drive clearly. I left Providence a little after 5, right after I finished my shift at the law office. I was tired, hungry, and irritated with myself for letting another family event slip into a vague, last-minute thing. I knew it was Grandma's birthday. I had planned to call her earlier. Then work got busy, and I told myself I would call once I was on the road. That excuse didn't feel so harmless when I got there. The first stretch was highway. Then I took the smaller roads through Larkspur, where old trees leaned over the pavement, and every house seemed to have a stone wall out front. I pulled into Grandma's gravel drive a few minutes after 8. The porch light was shining. Every other window in the house was black. When I came through the back door, I could tell something was wrong before I even saw her. The kitchen table looked like a party had been set up and then forgotten. There were 8 places set. The dried flowers she had cut that morning were arranged right in the middle. Her cake sat on a pedestal dish with the number 78 written in pink icing. The candles had burned down until they were tiny lumps of wax stuck in the frosting. A carton of strawberry and vanilla ice cream had leaked onto the tablecloth. Grandma was sitting in her usual chair at the head of the table. She had on a pale blue cardigan and both hands were wrapped around a glass of water. "Maya," she said when she saw me. Then she smiled. A second later, the smile faded. "Is it Wednesday?" "It's Saturday, Grandma. It's your birthday." She blinked and looked at the cake. "Oh." She reached out and touched one of the frosting flowers with one finger. "I thought I was making that for the ladies' luncheon." I put the flowers from my car in an old jar by the sink. Then I cut us each a piece of cake. We ate it with our fingers because neither one of us felt like dealing with forks. I sang happy birthday to her once, and halfway through she looked up at me and said, "Could you start over? I want to hear all of it." So I did. I sang it again. By 10, she was nodding off at the table. I walked her down the hall and helped her get into bed. She had gotten so light. When I lifted her arm to pull the quilt around her shoulders, her wrist felt almost too small in my hand. As I tucked her in, she grabbed my fingers. Her eyes changed for a second. The confusion was gone. She looked directly at me. "They think I miss things," she whispered. I waited, thinking she was about to explain, but her grip loosened, her eyes closed. Within seconds, she was asleep. I stood there for a while, looking at her. At the time, I thought she was talking about the birthday. I didn't understand yet that she meant something much bigger. You should probably know where I fit in this family. The Bennetts of Larkspur had always been comfortable in that polished, quiet way. Not flashy enough to admit they cared about money, but very aware of who had it. My father, Paul, had spent years as a senior accounts manager at an insurance company. By the time I was an adult, he was golfing several mornings a week and calling himself an independent consultant. My mother, Celia, organized charity events, chaired committees, and knew exactly who was supposed to sit beside whom at every fundraiser in town. My brother, Travis, ran a small construction and commercial development company called Bennett Siteworks. He drove an expensive imported SUV that probably cost more than I made in a year. And then there was me. I was a paralegal at a small elder law practice in Providence. We handled wills, powers of attorney, guardianship paperwork, trusts, estate planning. I made just over $50,000 a year and spent most evenings studying for the bar exam. My family called me the forms girl. At holiday dinners, Mom would smile at somebody and say, "Maya is still doing that little law office thing." She said it like I made handmade soaps at craft fairs. I never argued with her. I just paid attention. And that house? My grandmother's house? It was mine in every way that mattered emotionally, and in none of the ways my family cared to count. I took my first steps on that kitchen floor. When I was 20, Grandma sat with me on her back porch and taught me how to read my first apartment lease. Her reading glasses kept sliding down her nose, and she had a red pen tucked behind one ear. My parents had refused to co-sign because they said I should learn independence. Grandma signed the papers without making me feel ashamed for needing help. That night, I slept in the guest room, the room where I had spent summers as a kid. I lay awake, looking at the thin crack in the ceiling that I had stared at since I was 7. Around midnight, I got thirsty and went down the hall for water. That was when I noticed a business card tucked behind a framed family photo on the hallway shelf. It belonged to Marlowe Quinn from Quinn and Hale Realty. On the back, in someone's handwriting, were 2 short lines. Comparable value, $725,000, fastest closing possible. I put it exactly where I found it. My hands didn't shake, but my stomach did. The next morning, Sunday, Grandma was asleep in her recliner while I cleaned the kitchen. I put the leftover cake into containers. I threw away the waxy candle stubs. I washed frosting off the good dishes and returned them to the cabinet. And as I slid the final plate into place, I had one of those thoughts that hits you before you can push it away. I wondered who would come into this kitchen someday and empty those cabinets. I hated myself for thinking it, so I kept scrubbing. At about 10:15, someone knocked at the front door. When I opened it, 2 people were standing on the porch. The woman looked to be in her early 60s. She had a silver-gray bob, a dark wool coat, and a leather briefcase held close against her side. The man with her was younger, maybe mid-40s, and he had a notary stamp case tucked under his arm. "Are you Maya Bennett?" the woman asked. "Yes. My name is Marion Cole," she said. "This is Owen Burke. Your grandmother worked with our office 13 months ago." She held out a thick manila folder. It was sealed shut with a heavy paper flap. My grandmother's name was written on the tab in blue ink. "Edith instructed us to give this directly to you," Marion said. "Only you, and only when it became necessary." I looked down at the folder. Necessary for what? Marion glanced past me through the screen door, toward the living room where Grandma was asleep in her chair. Her face softened slightly. "When you're ready, come to my office," she said. "My card is inside." Then she lowered her voice. "And before you call your parents, speak to me first." I had more questions, obviously, 100 of them, but Marion and Owen were already walking back toward their car. I stood there on the porch holding that folder. It felt heavier than it should have, thick with maybe 40 or 50 pages. The seal had my grandmother's signature written across it. I knew that handwriting. The long curve at the bottom of her capital E, the rounded loop in the B of Bennett, the careful pressure of the pen. My phone vibrated. A text from Mom. "Who was at the house? Do not sign anything, Maya." I turned my phone face down and carried the folder into the kitchen. I sat at the same table where Grandma's untouched birthday cake had been sitting the night before. I ran my finger across the sealed flap. That signature was not the shaky scribble I had started seeing on grocery lists. It was firm, deliberate. the signature of someone who understood exactly what she was doing. I opened it. Inside were documents I recognized immediately from my job: a recorded property deed, a trust agreement, a durable power of attorney, witness pages, notarized signatures, a medical evaluation letter on a doctor's letterhead, and clipped to the front was a note written on my grandmother's stationery, cream-colored paper, blue ink. "Maya, if they try to take the house, open this. Everything you need is in here. I love you. I'm sorry you have to be the one." I read that note 3 times. Every time I got to the words, "if they try to take the house," I felt worse. She didn't write, "if anything happens." She had written it like she already knew. She had been preparing. 13 months earlier, before the memory problems got this bad, before she called me Celia sometimes, before she left a pan on the stove and forgot it was there, before she got turned around while driving to the pharmacy, which was less than 5 minutes from her house. She knew someone would come after that home, and she had made a plan. I closed the folder and placed my hand flat on top of it. From the living room, I could hear Grandma breathing in her recliner. Her crossword book slid from her lap and hit the carpet. She had hired a lawyer. She had signed documents. She had left instructions for me. I barely slept that night. The folder sat on the nightstand beside me while I stared at the ceiling crack and listened to the old house settle around me. On Monday morning, I called in sick for the first time in 4 years. I knew I needed to stay. I found the first real proof while I was taking out the recycling. Behind the flower bushes near the side of the house, attached to the utility meter, was a realtor lockbox, the kind with a combination dial. I knew exactly what it was. You see them outside houses that are for sale. They hold the keys for agents and buyers. Someone had been showing Grandma's house. I went back inside, walked to the hallway table, and started looking through her mail. There were weeks of unopened envelopes, a phone bill, catalogs, coupons, medical statements. Buried underneath them was a listing sheet from Quinn and Hale Realty. It said the house was an off-market listing. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, original wood flooring, a 1/4-acre lot. Asking price, $725,000. That was $55,000 less than the closest comparable house sale in her neighborhood. Then I went to the kitchen junk drawer. That was where I found the worst part: a purchase agreement. It had not been signed, but every blank was filled in. Buyer, Northgate Residential Holdings, LLC. Cash purchase, 28-day close. The seller's signature line was still empty, but underneath it, someone had written E. Bennett in pencil, like they were practicing where my grandmother's name would go. The listing agent was Marlowe Quinn. The buyer's contact was someone I didn't recognize. But the seller's representative listed on the form was Travis Bennett, my brother. I sat down on the kitchen floor and spread all of it around me: the lockbox, the business card, the listing sheet, the purchase agreement, and then I found a sticky note in my mother's handwriting. Closing goal, November 6th. That was 9 days away. I picked up Grandma's folder from the guest room and opened the trust agreement again. This time I read every line. Then I called my mother. It was around 6 that evening. "Oh, Maya," Mom said when she answered. She had that bright, controlled warmth in her voice, the voice she used with volunteers and restaurant staff. Pleasant, but always a little above you. "How is your grandmother doing? We had the most wonderful time in Park City. The snow was unbelievable." "There's a realtor lockbox attached to Grandma's meter." There was silence. Not long, maybe 3 seconds. Then Mom said, "Sweetheart, that is being handled. Your father and Travis have been working with a very good agent. We're trying to make a suitable plan for Edith. There's a purchase contract in her kitchen drawer." "Maya." Her voice changed. The warmth disappeared. "This is a family decision your father, your brother, and I have been managing for quite a while. You do not need to get involved in the details." "Does Grandma know you're selling her house?" "She understands what she needs to understand." I heard glass clink on her end of the call. Then she continued, Travis's business is having a difficult period. The house can cover a quality care home for your grandmother and help your brother through a temporary financial problem. It's the sensible option. It belongs to her, Mom. Maya. This time her voice was cold. Your grandmother has dementia. She leaves appliances on. She becomes confused in familiar places. She is not in a condition to decide what happens to a property worth more than $700,000. Then she said the sentence that stayed with me. She won't even remember that house by the holidays. For a second, I couldn't speak. Then I said, then it's lucky somebody does. And I hung up. I took out Marion Cole's business card and placed it beside Grandma's folder under the kitchen light. The next day, I would drive back to Providence. But that night, I had a lot of reading to do. Marion Cole's office was on the second floor of an old brick townhouse on Broad Street. The building had been converted into offices years ago. The waiting room had faded rugs, framed law degrees, and a small brass plaque that read, Cole Legal Group, Elder Law and Estate Planning. I had called at 7:30 in the morning. The receptionist transferred me to Marion almost immediately. Anyone who has dealt with a law office knows that does not happen by accident. Maya, Marion said when she came on the line, I'm glad you called. Can you come in today? So I drove the same route all over again. When I arrived, Marion met me in a conference room. There was a pot of chamomile tea on the table and a box of tissues placed between us. She didn't comment on the tissues. She just set them there like she knew they might be needed. Your grandmother came to see me 13 months ago, she said. Why? Because she had gotten lost while driving. Marion explained that in early September of the year before, Grandma had become confused behind the wheel. Instead of going home, she ended up in a neighboring town and could not remember how to get back. A neighbor who recognized her car helped her return. The next morning she called us, Marion said. Did she know you? She knew our office. A friend of hers had created a trust here years ago. Marion paused. Your grandmother came in alone. She was organized, alert. She had every document she thought we might need. Then Marion looked at me. She was afraid. Of what? Marion folded her hands together. Of this. She told me Grandma had said, my son gives in when Celia pushes, and Celia will sell my house the moment she thinks I can't stop her. I sat there, staring at Marion. She really said that? She did. Marion's voice remained calm, but there was no uncertainty in it. Your grandmother wanted to make decisions before she could no longer make them legally. I set my tea down. She selected you, Maya. Specifically you. Me? She said you would protect the house because you understood what it meant. She also said you were the one person in the family who would read every page before signing anything. Marion opened a copy of the folder. Let me walk you through what she did. 13 months earlier, Grandma had come into that same office wearing neatly pressed trousers and pearl earrings. She had a file of her own under her arm. Inside were the house deed, tax information, a will from the late 90s, and a yellow legal pad full of questions written in her looping blue handwriting. She was very careful, Marion said. She told me she had noticed her memory changing. First names, then appointments, then routes she had driven for years. Grandma's neurologist had used the phrase early-stage cognitive decline. She said she might have a year, maybe more, maybe less, but she wanted to handle things while she still had the ability to understand what she was signing. The ability to do what? I asked. To make binding choices about her own life. Marion turned another page. Edith wanted two things. She wanted to protect her house, and she wanted to decide who would protect her if she no longer could. She didn't choose my dad? Marion looked at me over her glasses. No, she did not. She said it simply, but I felt the meaning of it settle in my chest. My father was Grandma's only child. He had grown up in that house. She had fed him at that kitchen table. She had paid for his college. She had helped him buy his first suit for job interviews. She had danced with him at his wedding. But when it came time to trust someone with her house, her money, her medical care, and the final decisions of her life, she had not chosen him. She chose me. Because she knew Dad would bend to Mom. She knew Mom would measure everything in money and appearances. And she knew Travis would take whatever he could convince himself he needed. "Your grandmother signed these documents on September 8th last year," Marion continued. "She had full legal capacity that day. Her neurologist, Dr. Nadia Alvarez, completed a written evaluation at the same time. Dr. Alvarez confirmed that Edith understood the consequences of every document she signed." Marion tapped the medical letter. "This is one of the strongest pieces of evidence you have." The setup was clean. I recognized all of it from work. First, Grandma had formed a revocable living trust. She transferred the house into the Edith J. Bennett Revocable Living Trust. The property deed had been placed in the trust. The title had been moved into the trust. Grandma remained the trustee as long as she could make her own decisions, but I had been named successor trustee. If she became incapacitated, control of the home passed to me, not to Dad, not to Travis, to me. The second document was a durable power of attorney. Grandma had named me as her agent for financial and healthcare matters. The important part was that it stayed valid if she became incapacitated. It didn't end when she got sick. It became more important. "The home technically isn't in her individual name anymore?" I asked. "Correct," Marion said. "The trust owns it. Edith cannot sell it personally, and no individual power of attorney gives anyone control over trust property unless the trust says so." "And the trust says I'm in charge?" "Once her incapacity is established, yes." Marion paused. "And based on what you told me, it may already be active." I told her about Grandma leaving the stove on, getting lost near the pharmacy, forgetting the birthday. Marion nodded. Then she leaned toward me. "There is something else you should know. If your family had Edith sign newer papers after her decline began, a newer power of attorney or an agreement with a realtor, those documents may not hold up legally." My throat tightened. "They may have gotten her to sign something newer?" "That is possible," Marion said. "And if she did not understand what she was signing, those papers can be challenged." I drove back to Larkspur that evening. The porch light was on when I got there. It was always on. Through the front window, I could see Grandma asleep in her recliner with the television murmuring softly. Her reading glasses were folded on the armrest. I used the spare key she had given me when I was 16. She had never given one to my parents. "Grandma," I called. She looked up, and for a few seconds, her eyes were completely clear. Not the gentle confusion I had become used to, not the blank, pleasant expression. Clear. "You saw Marion," she said. I stopped in the doorway. "You remember Marion?" "I remember enough." She picked up her reading glasses and turned them over in her hands. "I remember being frightened. I remember telling her what Celia would do when I got worse." She looked at me carefully. "Did I make the right arrangements?" I sat on the arm of the couch. "You did exactly the right thing." "Good." She put on her glasses, then immediately took them off again, like she had forgotten why she wanted them. "They've had people walking through the house," she said, "usually on Tuesdays, when the home aide is here. I hear doors open. I hear strangers in the hallway." "I know." "Your father won't look at me when he visits. He talks at the walls instead." She pressed her lips together. "Travis brought papers over, too." My whole body went tense. "Do you remember what you signed?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I remember him saying it was important. I remember he wanted me to write my name." I took her hand. "It doesn't matter what you signed. You already protected yourself." Her hand was thin, but when she squeezed my fingers, it was intentional. "I'm still here, Maya," she said. The words sat between us. By the next morning, she might not remember saying them, but I would. I would carry that memory for both of us if I had to. Travis came by on Wednesday. He did not knock. He never knocked at Grandma's house. He always came in like he belonged there more than everyone else. I heard his keys before I saw him. "Hey, May," he called from the hallway. He leaned down and kissed the top of my head as he walked past. He smelled like expensive cologne and leather car seats. "Checking on Grandma? That's nice." "I'm staying here for a while." "Oh, are you?" He opened the fridge, grabbed a can of sparkling water, and leaned against the counter. "Taking a vacation from your paralegal career?" He said paralegal like it was a silly pastime. "Travis," I said, "I know the house is listed." The can stopped halfway to his mouth. For one moment, his expression went blank. Then he reset it. He smiled, but now it was a negotiating smile. "Look, I get why it seems sudden," he said, "but the business is under pressure. I have a balloon loan payment coming due in 7 weeks, $815,000. I stared at him. "If I don't make that payment, the lender takes the company. Every project, every contract, everything I've built for the last few years." "So you're selling Grandma's house to cover your debt?" "I'm helping manage an asset Grandma cannot manage anymore." He put the unopened can on the counter. "Maya, this solves every problem. Grandma gets into a good place with full-time care. Mom and Dad stop worrying. I save the company. It helps everyone." "Not Grandma." "Grandma doesn't even know what day it is. She knows strangers have been coming into her kitchen." His jaw tightened. He stepped closer to me. "Don't turn this into something ugly. We're family. Family is supposed to help each other." "Did you say that to her when you brought those papers?" He stared at me. Then the smile came back, but it looked forced now. "It's already basically a done deal," he said. "The closing is scheduled." He left the empty can on the counter and walked out. He didn't even bother to throw it away. That night, I started searching the house. At the bottom of the hallway cabinet, behind old magazines and mail-order catalogs, I found the papers Travis had mentioned. A power of attorney dated September 20th. It named my father, Paul Bennett, as Grandma's agent for all financial and property decisions. Attached to it was a seller authorization for the home. It listed Travis Bennett as the person allowed to act on Grandma's behalf. I carried both papers to the kitchen table and laid them beside the documents Marion had given me. The difference between the signatures was obvious before I had even read the legal language. Grandma's trust paperwork from 13 months earlier had a strong signature. The pen pressure was steady, every letter connected. The curves were smooth and sure. I knew that handwriting. That was the same hand that had written shopping lists on the refrigerator pad. The same hand that had signed my school forms with a fountain pen. The same hand that wrote long birthday cards full of advice I didn't always appreciate until later. The September signature was different. The lines trembled. The first letter barely lifted from the page. The loops were broken. There were gaps where the pen had stopped between letters. That signature did not look like a woman making a decision. It looked like someone had placed a pen in her hand and told her where to press down. I checked the date on my phone, September 20th. My stomach dropped. That was the same week Grandma had fallen in the bathroom and been taken to the emergency room. Mom had texted me at the time. "Grandma had a little fall, nothing major. She's resting." I believed her. I hadn't asked more questions, but when I dug through the mail, I found the hospital discharge report. It said Grandma had been disoriented. It mentioned periods of confusion. It recommended follow-up with neurology. They had her sign a new power of attorney during the same week she was in the hospital for cognitive confusion. I took pictures of every page. Then I called Marion. Marion came to the house that Friday, not to her office, to Grandma's kitchen. She told me it mattered that we go through the documents where the whole thing was happening. I understood why as soon as she laid everything out. The kitchen table was old maple. It had scratches from decades of holiday dinners and rings from coffee mugs. Grandma used to say the marks gave it personality. That morning, the table looked like evidence storage. Marion lined up 5 documents across the surface with their edges perfectly straight. The first was the recorded deed. It had been filed with the Larkspur municipal clerk on September 11th, the year before. It showed the transfer of Grandma's home at 22 Willow Crest Road into the Edith J. Bennett Revocable Living Trust. It was stamped, indexed, public record. The second document was the durable power of attorney naming me as Grandma's agent. It had 2 witnesses. It had been notarized by Owen Burke. The third was Dr. Alvarez's capacity letter from September 8th. 2 pages, clinical language, precise. It stated that Grandma understood the kind of legal documents she was signing. It said she was aware of her property, knew the people in her life, and had clearly expressed what she wanted done with her home. The fourth was the September power of attorney naming my father. A shaky signature. No independent capacity report. No medical assessment. Signed during a week when Grandma's own hospital records described her confusion. The fifth document was the listing agreement. Travis was named as the seller's representative. Marlo Quinn was listed as the real estate agent. The property was being offered privately for $55,000 under similar homes in the neighborhood. Marion stood on the other side of the table with both hands resting on the wood. "The house has belonged to the trust for more than a year," she said. "Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual because it is not her individual asset anymore." She pointed at the September power of attorney. "Even if this paper were legitimate, which is doubtful, it would not give your father control over property in the trust." She looked directly at me. "This sale cannot go through, Maya. It was never theirs to sell." I looked at the 2 signatures side by side. One was strong, one was barely holding together, and I heard my mother's voice in my head. "She won't remember the house by the holidays." But Grandma had remembered before any of them did. She remembered early enough to protect herself. Marion and I made a plan. No shouting, no family confrontation in the kitchen, no emotional speech before we had proof, just documents. The first thing we needed was a current cognitive evaluation. We needed something a court or title office would accept, something that would confirm Grandma now lacked capacity and likely lacked it when the September papers were signed. That meant getting back in touch with Dr. Alvarez's office. I called first thing Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 10 minutes. When she came back, her voice had changed. I knew that tone from my own job. It was the careful, official way people speak when they are about to tell you something you will not like. "I'm sorry," she said, "but there is a restriction on Mrs. Bennett's medical records." I gripped the phone tighter. "A restriction?" "Yes, we have a request on file that records and evaluations are only to be released to the designated family contact." "Who requested that?" "I can't provide that information." "Who is listed as the family contact?" She paused. "Paul Bennett." My father. They had locked me out of Grandma's medical records. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. The restriction had been put in place 5 weeks earlier, right after they got Grandma to sign the new power of attorney. They hadn't just pressured her into signing papers, they had built a wall around her. I called Marion. "They restricted my access to her medical records." "I expected they might," she said. "You expected it?" "We will file a medical authorization using the durable power of attorney Edith gave you. Yours was signed earlier. It names you as her healthcare agent, and the clinic is required to recognize it." Marion sent the paperwork that afternoon. 2 days later, I had the records, and Dr. Alvarez agreed to perform a new formal evaluation. I remember sitting in the parking lot afterward and quietly telling myself, the system does work. It just works slowly. Celia came to the house on Thursday evening. She did not bring soup. She did not bring flowers. She did not bring anything you might bring when visiting an elderly woman who had just spent a birthday sitting alone. She brought a brochure. Cedar Ridge Memory Care. She laid it on the kitchen table, the same table where Marion and I had spread out the legal documents. "It's a beautiful place, Maya," she said. "Private rooms, garden paths, activities, full-time staff. Grandma doesn't want to leave her house." Grandma is no longer able to make that decision. Mom smoothed the brochure with both hands. "Your father and I have been researching facilities for weeks. If we move her soon, the house can be prepared for the transfer without any more delay." I looked at her. "You're getting it ready for the buyer you already found." For a second, I saw it, the smallest shift in her face. Then it was gone. "Maya, I understand you're emotional," she said. "You've always been attached to this place, but Travis is in trouble and this family needs to stand together. By taking a 78-year-old woman's home while she has dementia? After everything I have done for this family." Her voice cracked. Tears filled her eyes. I couldn't tell whether they were real or whether she had simply learned how to summon them when she needed them. After 31 years, I had stopped trying to figure that out. "The title company has the papers," she said. "The closing is November 6th. This is happening." She left the Cedar Ridge brochure on the table. That night, I almost gave up. I thought about how much easier it would be to leave, go back to Providence, focus on work, let my parents deal with the mess they had created. But if you have ever watched people decide an older person is inconvenient once their memory begins to fail, then you understand why I stayed. If this is bringing up something you've seen in your own family, comment, "I see her," below and subscribe, because in 9 days, every one of us would be in the same room, and the truth would be sitting on a table. We had 9 days. The closing was scheduled for November 6th at Harbor Point Title on Commerce Street, just a few blocks from Larkspur's Town Green. Mom had arranged it the way she arranged dinner reservations and committee meetings, efficiently, like the outcome had already been decided. The next morning, I went to Marion's office and we went over our options. The first option was an emergency filing in probate court to block the sale. Marion believed it would work, but it would become public immediately. It would cost money, it could move slowly, and it would give my parents and Travis time to react. They could move Grandma, hire another attorney, create confusion, try to make the situation look more complicated than it was. The second option was to let the closing happen, to show up with the documents. Marion explained it plainly. "If we bring the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence to the title company, they cannot ensure a sale where ownership is disputed. They will not close a transaction when there is a clear problem with the title." "And if they try?" I asked. "Title officers can be held responsible for knowingly processing a defective transaction. No careful officer is going to record a deed they know is not valid." Marion removed her glasses and placed them on the conference table. "This is the quieter option," she said. "No courtroom at first, no public filing. We bring proof to the people who need to see it. The buyer, the agent, the title officer, your family. They will all be in one room." I thought about Grandma's note. If they try to take the house, open this. She had not told me to make a scene. She had handed me paperwork. "Let the documents speak," Marion said. 9 days. I went home and started counting. Day 1. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the Larkspur Municipal Building and called the state hotline for elder abuse. The intake worker was calm, patient, and not surprised by anything I said. That part upset me more than I expected. She had heard it all before. Different people, different towns, the same basic story. I told her about Grandma's dementia, the power of attorney signed while she was recovering from a hospital visit for confusion, the off-market sale below neighborhood value, the son who would benefit financially, the daughter-in-law who seemed to be running the entire thing. "We'll assign an investigator," she said. "You should receive a case number within 3 business days." "Is there any way to speed it up?" I asked. "You mentioned a closing date in 9 days. I'll mark the case time sensitive." I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat there for a full minute. Across the street, two older women were walking into the library together, both laughing at something one of them had said. They looked safe, normal. That simple sight made me want to cry. When I got back to Grandma's house, I had a voicemail from Marion. "Maya, something else has come up," she said. "A PS told me informally that this is not the first complaint connected to your grandmother." I called her right back. "Someone made an anonymous report about 5 weeks ago," she explained. "They never left their name or contact information, so nothing moved forward at the time, but there is already a file." 5 weeks earlier, right around the time my family got Grandma to sign the September power of attorney, someone else had noticed. Someone had seen what was happening and been worried enough to call. They hadn't been ready to attach their name to it, but they cared enough to pick up the phone. I didn't know who it was then, but it meant a PS would not be starting from nothing. The system was slow, but it was moving. Day 4. My father came to the house alone. He pulled into the driveway in an old 12-year-old sedan, not the newer car he drove to church or country club lunches. It was the car he used for errands, the one no one looked twice at. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before getting out. I watched from the kitchen window. His shoulders were rounded forward. He looked smaller than I remembered. He came in through the back door, just like he had when he was a kid. At first, he didn't even acknowledge me. He stood in the kitchen and looked around. At the cabinets his mother had refinished herself. At the window over the sink where she had hung a little colored glass charm that sent bits of light onto the floor every morning. "She used to sing in here," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. "Ella Fitzgerald," he continued, "every Sunday when she made breakfast." "I remember." He sat down at the maple table. He put both palms on the surface and I saw his hands shaking. "I know what you think of me," he said. I waited. "I didn't want this," he said. "I didn't want any of it." He looked down. "Travis is in deep trouble. Celia says this house is the only way to keep him from losing everything. And Mom," his voice caught, only a little, "Mom would never want Travis to lose it all." "You could still stop this, Dad." He looked at me. For one painful second, I saw the kid Grandma had raised in that house, the little boy who had eaten cake from those plates, the teenager she had driven to school, the man she had trusted enough to love, but not enough to protect her. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. "Celia." He stood up. "I need to go." And he left through the back door. He did not say goodbye to his mother. After he was gone, I washed the mug he had used for coffee and put it back in the cabinet. Day 5. I bought a cake. Nothing special. A small 7-inch cake from the neighborhood bakery. Yellow cake. Cream cheese frosting. 1 candle in the middle because 78 candles seemed dangerous, and I thought Grandma might laugh at that. At 3 in the afternoon, I placed it on the kitchen table. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 napkins. I made tea. "Grandma," I called, "come sit with me." She walked in slowly from the living room. Her reading glasses were sitting on top of her head, and she had folded a crossword puzzle into the pocket of her cardigan. She saw the cake and stopped. "Whose birthday is it?" "Yours," I said. "We're doing it again." She sat down. I lit the candle. She watched the little flame with so much concentration, like she was trying to take a picture of that moment inside her mind before it disappeared. "Make a wish," I told her. She closed her eyes and blew out the candle on the first try. "What did you wish for?" I asked. She looked straight at me. "I wished you would stay." I swallowed hard. Then we ate cake with forks. She told me about the flower bushes by the walkway. She had planted them in 1993, the year I was born. Then she told me the kitchen table had belonged to her mother in Danbury. It had been brought to this house in the back of a pickup truck in 1978. "Every mark on it is a holiday I hosted," she said. She laughed a little. Then she put down her fork and leaned toward me. "Don't let them move the table." Her voice was quiet, but she meant it. "I won't," I told her. "The table stays here." The table stays. Later, I cleared our plates. I washed the dishes. I wrapped the leftover cake in foil and wrote, "Edith's birthday, take 2, across the top with a marker. 4 days until the closing. Day 6. That was when the phone calls started. My dad's cousin, Aunt Elaine, called first. She sounded careful, concerned. "Maya, honey, your mother says you're trying to take over Edith's finances. She said you may be manipulating her." I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the ceiling. "Aunt Elaine," I said, "did Mom tell you she and Travis are trying to sell Grandma's home while Grandma has dementia?" There was a long pause. "She said it was a family decision." "It's a decision Grandma didn't make." Then one of Mom's friends from church called, then Travis's business partner, then a woman from the garden club who had known Grandma for decades. Every call had the same message, just worded differently. Maya is going too far. Maya is emotional. Maya does not understand the family's finances. My mother was doing what she always did best. She was getting her version of the story into people's heads before I had a chance to say anything. I didn't fight back. I didn't post online. I didn't call people back and plead my side. Marion had told me, "The papers will speak. You don't need to campaign." But later that night, around 9, my phone rang again. It was Grandma's younger sister, Aunt Marion. She was 74, lived in Danbury, and had no patience for nonsense. "Maya," she said, "I don't believe one word Celia is saying, and I want you to know why." "Why?" "Because your grandmother called me last year, early September. She told me she had gone to a lawyer. She said she was putting the house in order while she still had her mind clear enough to do it." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "What else did she say?" Aunt Marion's voice softened. She said, "If something happens, make sure Maya is not alone." I couldn't say anything for a moment. "I'm with you," Aunt Marion said. "Tell me what you need." Day 7. Marion and I confirmed the details of the closing. Harbor Point title, November 6th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, conference room 3. The escrow officer was named Elaine Porter. She had been in title work for nearly 2 decades. Marion's contact described her as thorough, cautious, and very by the book. The buyer was Northgate Residential Holdings, a regional cash purchase company that bought homes under market value, fixed them up, rented them out, or flipped them. Their representative was Mark Harlan. Marlo Quinn would attend as the listing agent. Celia and Travis would be there as Grandma's supposed representatives. Dad would be there because Mom told him to be. Then Marion made one more call to the title company. Afterward, she called me. "Elaine Porter flagged the file 3 weeks ago," she said. "Why?" "During the title search, she saw that the property was held in a trust. She contacted Marlo Quinn and asked for an explanation." "What did Marlo say?" "She gave Elaine an affidavit claiming the trust had been ended and the property transferred back into Edith's individual name." My stomach turned. "But that never happened." "No," Marion said, "it didn't." Elaine had accepted the claim temporarily, but noted in the file that no recorded deed transferring the property back to Grandma had ever been found. The closing had been scheduled as tentative, waiting for final title clearance. Marlo had lied. The trust was still active. The public deed was still recorded. The entire sale was already shaky. All it needed was someone to place the actual paperwork in front of the right person. Here's the thing people miss about documents. They don't get nervous. They don't change their story. They don't forget what happened. If you have ever been the quiet person everyone underestimated, stay with me. Because this next part was for every person who got dismissed until the facts were laid out. 2 days left. Day 8. Everything was ready. Marion would attend as Grandma's attorney and as counsel for the trust. She would bring certified copies of the recorded property deed, the durable power of attorney, and Dr. Alvarez's original capacity evaluation. Owen Burke would attend as the notary who had witnessed Grandma's original documents. A PS had assigned an investigator named Joan Tiller. She would not be inside the closing room. That was not how their process worked. but she had confirmed that the case was active and urgent. Whatever happened at the closing would become part of the investigation. That afternoon, I sat at Grandma's kitchen table and went through everything again. Trust deed, durable power of attorney, medical capacity letter, September power of attorney with the trembling signature, realtor agreement, purchase contract, hospital discharge summary. Every page supported the same conclusion. Every date led back to the same thing. They had tried to sell property they didn't own. I practiced what I would say. Short sentences. No accusations until the evidence was on the table. No shouting, no crying, just facts in a normal voice. Marian had coached me. "You are not going there to persuade them," she said. "You are going there to present proof. The title officer will do the rest." I was not just the girl they ignored at family dinners. I was not the forms girl. I was the successor trustee of the Edith J. Bennett Revocable Living Trust. I had the legal authority to be in that room. More than that, I had a responsibility. That night, I ironed a blouse and placed my flats by the front door. They were the same flats I had worn when I drove 3 hours to sing Happy Birthday to Grandma while she sat alone at a table set for 8. The next day, my family would sit down to sell a house that did not belong to them, and I would be there when they found out. The night before the closing, I sat with Grandma in the living room. She was having a good hour. Not a good day, a good hour. Those had become rare. She was working on a crossword puzzle, with her glasses low on her nose and a pen in her hand. She never used pencils for crosswords. She always said pencils were for people who didn't trust their own answers. "Grandma," I said, "tomorrow is going to be important." "Mm-hmm," she said without looking up. Then she frowned at the puzzle. 7 across, she said. "Legal arrangement that protects property, 5 letters." I smiled. "Trust." She wrote it in. "Show off," she said. I watched her hand move across the paper, slowly, carefully. Her handwriting was no longer the same strong script from the year before, but it wasn't the broken scrawl from the September papers either. It was somewhere in between. She was still trying. She put down the crossword and looked at me. "You're staying?" "I'm staying." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out an old leather glasses case with a brass clasp. She had carried it for as long as I could remember. She opened it and took out a folded note. Then she handed it to me. The writing was shaky, but I could read it. "For Maya, the one who looks after the table." Underneath was her signature. Not perfect, not strong, but intentional. A final mark from a woman who knew she was fading and still wanted her voice to count. "I'm still here," she said. I folded the note and put it in my wallet. The next morning, the folder, that note, and I were all going to the closing together. Harbor Point Title was in a 1-story brick building on Commerce Street. The windows were tinted, and the brass handle on the front door was polished so often you could see your reflection in it. I parked across the street at 140. Marian pulled in beside me a few minutes later. Owen was already inside. We walked in together. Marian had her briefcase. I had the manila folder. Conference room 3 was small. 10 chairs around an oval table. A water pitcher. A printer in the corner making its low mechanical noise. Elaine Porter, the escrow officer, was at the head of the table, organizing document packets into tidy stacks. She looked up when we entered. Her eyes went to Marian. Then she paused. The kind of pause that told me she recognized the name. "Ms. Cole," she said, "I didn't see your firm listed on this transaction." "I represent the Edith J. Bennett Revocable Living Trust," Marian replied. "We have information that directly affects this closing." Elaine's pen stopped moving. Before she could say anything else, the door opened again. Mom came in first. She was wearing a tailored cream blazer, her pearls, and the smile she used at social events. It was bright and prepared, like she had already decided this was her room. Travis came in behind her with a leather portfolio under one arm. His jaw was tight. Dad followed them. His face looked gray, and he kept his eyes on the floor. Then came Marlo Quinn, The realtor. Blonde highlights, small heels. A stack of closing papers held open in her hands like she had won something. Mark Harlan, the buyer's representative, walked in last. Navy suit, serious face, no small talk. Mom saw me and stopped. Maya? Then she saw Marion. Then the folder in my hands. Her smile stayed in place, but it wasn't relaxed anymore. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I'm here to sit down," I said. I pulled out a chair. Marion sat beside me. I placed the manila folder in front of me and waited. The printer stopped. The room became very quiet. Elaine looked at Marion. "You said you have documents?" "I do." Marion opened her briefcase. She placed 3 items on the table one at a time. Each paper was centered, square, careful. The first was a certified copy of Grandma's recorded trust deed. "This was filed with the Larkspur Municipal Clerk on September 11th last year," Marion said. "It transferred the home at 22 Willowcrest Road into the Edith J. Bennett Revocable Living Trust." She nodded toward me. "Maya Bennett is the named successor trustee." Mom's smile disappeared slowly, not all at once. You could see it drop piece by piece. Marion placed the second document beside the deed. "This is the durable power of attorney naming Maya as Edith Bennett's financial and healthcare agent. It was signed September 8th last year, witnessed, notarized, and it remains valid." Travis leaned forward. "We have a newer power of attorney," he said. "It replaces that one." Marion placed the third item on the table. "This is Dr. Alvarez's medical capacity evaluation from the date Edith signed the trust documents. It confirms she understood exactly what she was doing." Then Marion placed another evaluation beside it. "I also have a current assessment completed last week. It confirms that Edith now lacks legal capacity to sign documents of this kind." No one spoke. Marion continued. "That means the power of attorney your family obtained in September was signed after her cognitive decline had become significant. It was signed during the same period her medical records documented confusion. She did not have the legal ability required to make that document binding." Elaine picked up the deed. She read it. Then she opened her own file and compared the information. Finally, she looked at Marlowe. "Ms. Quinn, you told me this trust had been terminated." Marlowe's face lost all color. "I was told that it had been," she said. "The trust was not terminated," Marion said. "The recorded deed makes that clear. This house belongs to the trust. It cannot be sold through this transaction." Elaine put the deed down. She straightened her shoulders. Then she said the sentence that ended everything. "I cannot close this sale." She had seen it. She had understood it, and she had done exactly what her job required. Mark Harlan closed his portfolio. Marlowe stared at the tabletop. Travis gripped both armrests so hard his knuckles turned pale. Mom looked at me as if I had taken the ground out from under her. The silence lasted a few seconds. Then Mom stood up. "This is absurd," she said. Her voice rose as she spoke. "Maya is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Edith's only child. He has a signed power of attorney giving him full control over—" "A power of attorney signed by a woman who had been hospitalized for confusion that same week?" Marion said. Her tone did not change. "An unsigned trust dissolution claim does not erase a recorded deed, and even a valid individual power of attorney would not give authority over trust property." "You cannot do this," Travis said as he stood. His voice didn't have Mom's social anger in it. His sounded frightened. "I have an $815,000 payment due in 5 weeks. If this falls apart—" "Mr. Bennett," Elaine said, "your financial obligations are not relevant to this title matter." "This is my grandmother's house," Travis said. "It is the trust's house," Marion corrected, "and it is controlled by the trustee your grandmother appointed." She looked at me. "That trustee is sitting at this table." Travis turned toward me. You are going to ruin this family." I looked at him, and I kept my voice exactly the way I had practiced. Not loud, not shaky, just clear. "You tried to sell a 78-year-old woman's home while she sat by herself on her birthday with a cake no one came to eat." His face changed. I kept going. "You had her sign papers during a week when she was confused and recovering from a fall. You told the title company the trust was gone when it was not. And now you're telling me I'm the one destroying this family?" Travis opened his mouth, then closed it. His fists were tight at his sides. Mom started crying. Not quiet tears, loud, messy sobbing. "After everything," she said, "everything I've done for all of you." Dad had not spoken once since he entered. He was staring down at the trust deed, at his mother's signature. I could see the realization on his face. She had planned it. She had gone around him. She had looked at her only son and decided he would not protect her. Mark Harlan stood up. "I think this is finished," he said. He nodded once to Elaine and walked out. Marlo started gathering her papers without looking anyone in the eye. Marion spoke into the silence. "For the record, Adult Protective Services has an open investigation involving possible financial exploitation of Edith Bennett. The September power of attorney will be formally challenged. Any future attempt to sell, borrow against, or transfer property held by this trust without the trustee's approval will be treated as a legal matter." Mom stopped crying. The tears were still on her cheeks, but her expression changed. She looked at Marion, then at me. "You will regret this," she said. Her voice was low now. "When Travis loses his business, when your father has nothing left to fall back on, when this whole family breaks apart, you will remember that you did this." I stood up. I picked up the manila folder and put it into my bag. Then I looked at my mother, at the blazer, the pearls, the tears she had learned to use whenever they were useful. "You don't get to put a price on her life," I said. Then I turned to Elaine. "Thank you for doing your job." Elaine nodded. "I'll document this closing as void and flag the title file," she said. "You'll receive written confirmation by email." I walked out of conference room 3. Marion came behind me. Owen held the outer door open. The November air hit my face, sharp and cold. I stood on the sidewalk for several seconds before I remembered to take a full breath. Marion touched my elbow. "You handled that well." "I only did what Grandma asked me to do." "That's exactly what I meant," she said. I drove back to Willow Crest Road with the manila folder sitting on the passenger seat. 9 days earlier, that seat had held a cheap bouquet from a convenience store. Now it held the proof that saved my grandmother's house. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was still there. The flower bushes still lined the front walk. The porch light was on. Inside, Grandma was asleep in her recliner. Her crossword puzzle rested on her lap. Her glasses were still on her face. I knelt beside her chair and pulled the quilt higher over her shoulders. "It's over, Grandma," I whispered. "The house is safe." She stirred. Her hand found mine. Same thin hand, same small wrist. Her eyes opened cloudy at first, then, for just a second, they cleared. "Maya?" "I'm here." She looked at me. "Did you save the table?" I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that surprises you because you forgot you were still capable of it. "I saved the table." She smiled, small, certain. "Good girl," she said. Then she closed her eyes. Within a minute, she was asleep again, breathing slowly while the crossword rose and fell against her chest. I sat on the floor beside her chair and looked through the doorway into the kitchen, at the old maple table, scratched, coffee-stained, still standing exactly where it had stood for decades. The folder was in my bag. Grandma's note was in my wallet. The house belonged to the trust, and for the first time in 9 days, I stopped counting. Here's what happened after that. Travis's loan payment came due a little over 5 weeks later. He missed it. The lender began foreclosure proceedings against Bennett's Siteworks. He had 2 unfinished duplex projects outside Riverton and a commercial parcel in Ashby that he had overextended himself to buy. By February, his company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. He sold the expensive SUV. The last thing I heard, he was working as a site manager for another developer and earning a fraction of what he used to make. He never called me. He never apologized to Grandma. Mom's standing in Larkspur started to fall apart too. Not instantly. That kind of thing rarely happens all at once in a small town. But people talked. Aunt Marion talked. Elaine Porter documented the failed closing. Marlo Quinn had to explain why she had claimed a trust had been dissolved without a deed proving it. The church group chat where Mom used to post smiling vacation photos got quiet around her. She stopped going to the library board meetings. By summer, she and Dad had moved into a condo in Northfield. My father emailed me once. It was in May. 3 sentences. I should have stopped it. I understand that now. I'm sorry. I read the message twice. I did not answer. Some apologies arrive so late that they are not really apologies anymore. They are just proof that someone finally understands what they failed to do. APS substantiated the complaint. Over the next few months, there were 3 probate hearings. No one in my family contested them. The September power of attorney was officially voided. The court appointed me as Grandma's legal guardian and confirmed me as the permanent trustee of her trust. I postponed my bar exam. I took a leave from the firm, and I moved into the guest room at 22 Willowcrest Road, the one with the crack in the ceiling I had stared at since I was 7. I became the person who made sure Grandma ate dinner, took her medication, got dressed, sat out on the porch when the weather was mild. It wasn't the path I had mapped out for myself, but it was the one I knew I had to take. One Thursday in May, I baked a cake. Yellow cake. Cream cheese frosting. Nothing fancy. I set it on the kitchen table, the table that had come from Danbury in the back of a truck all those years ago, the table that had survived decades of holidays and one attempt to take the house around it. Grandma walked in from the living room with a crossword puzzle tucked under her arm. She looked at the cake. "Whose birthday is it?" "Nobody's," I said. "It's Thursday. We're having cake because it's Thursday." She sat down. She picked up a fork. She took one bite, then closed her eyes. "This is my recipe," she said. "It is." "Good." She took another bite. "Don't change it." "I won't." We ate cake in the kitchen while the afternoon light came through the window. The little colored glass charm over the sink still threw small patches of color across the floor. The table stayed. And I learned something I will never forget. Memory loss does not make a person less valuable. It does not make their life available for other people to divide up. Sometimes the quietest person in a family is the only one paying attention. That is my story. One empty birthday table, one manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered what mattered before anyone else did. If this made you think of someone you love, check on their wishes while they can still clearly express them. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.